Chapter 1 of His First and Last Appearance. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Maria Therese. His First and Last Appearance by Francis J. Fenn, S.J. Chapter 1 Showing how Philip Lachance sings a song, how he is rewarded, and how Policeman Spencer is troubled by the presence on his beat of a very suspicious character. It ought to have been a gloomy day, but it was not. Although the hands of the City Hall clock announced to the people of Milwaukee that it was only 3 in the afternoon, the streets were shrouded in a premature twilight. The sky above was of a dull, dead, slate color, and the wind below was sobbing when it ceased to howl. It was in a cutting humor, and its wings were of ice. It was a bitter, biting, clamorous northeaster, and when it nipped noses it left them red and their owners gasping. So I repeat, it ought to have been a gloomy day. However, there are other circumstances besides the weather to be taken into account, and moreover, the weather on this occasion had its redeeming features. After all, one does not expect sunny skies and long-drawn afternoons and balmy airs in mid-December. Then it was snowing in a quiet, steady, deliberate manner. The large, fluffy flakes came down thickly, leisurely, and snow in December, as every boy and girl will admit, is a glorious thing. It gives promise of merry sleighing to the joyous jingling of many bells, and of strong forts and of jolly snowball fights. Best of all, when it comes in mid-December, it was now the 17th of that wintry month, it whispers to the hearts of the young that gladdest of news, Christmas is coming! But if the snow and the bitter wind left any doubt as to the near advent of that joyous day, there were signs galore on this particular afternoon, which established it to a certainty. Rosy-cheeked matrons, they were all rosy-cheeked in this bracing weather, were pushing busily along the street, carrying bundles with tentative toys and pretty gifts and Christmas trees. They wore an air at once joyous and mysterious, joyous because they were shopping for the dear little ones at home, mysterious because, doing good by stealth, they feared the possibility of detection. And the shops, how gay they were with thronging customers and smiling, busy clerks and salesmen! How pretty with bunches of holly and ivy leaves and mistletoe! Express wagons were in much evidence, evergreen trees of many varieties, cut and trimmed for their festive appearance in the parlors of happy homes, were to be found at almost every corner, and errand boys were as plentiful as blackberries in late summer. The shops on Milwaukee Street, just north of the post office, were, of course, in their very best holiday attire. Of them all, none was brighter, none more inviting, none prettier, none more thronged than Conroy's, the proprietor of which, as everybody knows, or ought to know, is the fashionable caterer of Milwaukee. In front of this most inviting confectionery, but with his back to it, hopped and skipped a lad of about 10 years of age. His little nose was red, and his thin lips looked pinched and blue. His eyes were large, dark, and innocent. They were eyes that looked out into the world as though they expected to find a new friend in every man, woman, and child upon whom they alighted. An imaginative stranger meeting their gaze would read in them the pretty question, "Aren't you a friend of mine?" I am sorry to say that this little boy did not seem to be at all comfortable as he gazed with absorbing attention, though he continued his hopping and skipping movement, upon the dazzling cuff buttons, rings, and other articles of jewelry exhibited by a street vendor to a public which refused to be interested. The splendor of this array was splendor without heat, and the boy was evidently cold. His knickerbockers were thin and frayed. His jacket, buttoned close about him, was, in view of the weather, of a light texture, and overcoat he had none. His hands were deep in his pockets, so deep that he was bent forward, as though he were making a back for the game of leap-frog. Having at last satisfied himself with his examination of the wares, and stared artlessly at the vendor surveying him, that is, with an extensive view from top to toe, he addressed himself to chasing large, lingering flakes and catching them in his open mouth. In his not over-successful endeavours he bumped into several people, and receiving words from 2 or 3 of them, which were not exactly encouraging, he discontinued the amusement and turned his face toward Conroy's show-cases, large, magnificent, gleaming, resplendent. As he turned, there came along the street a man apparently advanced in years. He wore a ragged, fierce beard, long and unkempt. His cheeks were hollow and of a slightly yellow
Sample complete. Ready to continue?